Chapter 1 Resurrection, Shoujan Book 1. As we all know, the president of the Parkour Association in Province S has a lifelong tenure, because since the establishment of the association, several presidents have died in office, without exception. As the first female president of the association, Xia Yuanqi was undoubtedly hit by an oncoming truck during a downhill descent 6 months after taking office. In an absolutely unforgettable pain experience, Xia Yuanqi's vision gradually fell into darkness. When he opened his eyes again, what he saw was a world of dim light composed of 2 endless rows of large lights. Only the cold touch of the rough rocks beneath him reminded him that he was still alive. What a lousy place! Xia Yuanqi slowly got up, feeling that his body was very uncoordinated compared to usual. He stretched out his hand and saw that the slender and powerful arms that were originally trained in extreme sports were replaced by soft and delicate girl catkins. He touched his belly and found that the beautiful abdominal muscles he had trained for many years were gone. Moreover, the gray coarse cloth with poor weaving and visible mesh on his body was also the style of armor worn by poor women in ancient TV series. Is this the legendary time travel? Xia Yuanqi quickly realized his situation and began to look at the surrounding situation. This place seemed to be a hollow mountain belly. It took a lot of manpower to carve out winding corridors along the rugged stone walls of the cave. On them were carved pictures of ancient nobles traveling in carriages and horses, having banquets and enjoying themselves. Countless bronze lampposts carry jumping light, and along the stone corridor steps that surround the mountain wall and extend downward, it spreads into the dark and empty world of nothingness. TSK, the way down is setting a death flag for yourself. Xia Yuanqi turned around decisively and was shocked to find 3 girls dressed similarly to herself lying in the open space behind her, and the road leading up not far away had been buried by the landslide. Hey, wake up. He walked over and shook it vigorously, only to find that the girl's hands were cold. Faced with this situation, as a professional naughty boy, Xia Yuanqi, who had been used to being bold and arrogant since childhood, couldn't help but his heart skipped a beat. His hands shook, and his already stiff body fell softly to the ground with a dull sound. The girl's peaceful and delicate face seemed to be sleeping in the changing light and dark firelight, but in such a scene, it would only make people's hair stand on end. Trying to recall that when he was hiking through the African grasslands, he was a guest in a wild tribe and saw the natives holding a banquet with the corpses of their relatives and silently recited, "So what if the dead?" Xia Yuanqi slowly calmed down his mood. For some reason, these women died in this cave for no apparent reason. From the looks of it, it's probably not suicide. I'm the only one alive. The owner of this body is also dead, so I can use her body to resurrect them. Xia Yuanqi tried to push the collapsed earth and rocks on the road, but found that it was not moving at all and had been sealed. There are oil lamps lit all the way along the corridor, which shows that some people often add, it doesn't matter whether they are cultists who perform strange rituals or something else. Anyway, this life is picked up. You will probably understand it when you go downstairs. Xia Yuanqi took off the only copper hairpin on her head and sharpened it on the ground. She cut the long-sleeved skirt that was in the waist short and made 2 openings on her thighs to facilitate running like a cheongsam. She also tore the skirt of the female corpse on the ground into strips and tied it into a rope around her waist. Everything was ready. Xia Yuanqi took a long breath, concentrated, and walked down the stone steps. The corridor was very long, and the spiraling stairs seemed to lead to the dark abyss in the center of the earth. The cave was silent, and she could only hear the sound of her ta, stepping on the stone slabs echoing in the air. Xia Yuanqi's patience was also worn away by the unchanging world. Before her anxiety and impatience reached the critical point, she finally reached the flat stone chamber on the ground floor. It was an altar-like platform, surrounded by radiation. The shape is surrounded by 8 large rectangular cabinets about 4 meters long, and there are 2 small waist-high side boxes next to each cabinet. There is a huge round totem of a human-headed bird body god on the central floor. There is only a table and a futon in the center, with a Boshan stove, a green lantern, and a scroll placed on it. In front of the table, there is a three-person high semicircular boulder arch decorated with animal mouths, covered with gray-brown things that look like withered moss. Xia Yuanxi walked straight to the altar table and picked up the scroll. It was a landscape painting with vigorous brushstrokes. Although she knew nothing about art, she suddenly felt unclear about the severity. On the painting were traditional Chinese characters similar to official script, which vaguely read, "My ancestor Gu Shizi was also the supreme official. I once taught me the true shape map of Kunlun, Fenghu, Pumlai Mountain, and Shenzhou. I left it as a message to my old friend Note 2. Obviously, there is only one mountain, which is also known as the true shape map of China. Author, you have lost your moral integrity." Xia Yuanxi had been in close contact with wild African lions before, but she had never been so frightened. Fortunately, she reacted quickly and didn't even have time to throw down the scroll. She rolled on the spot in embarrassment, immediately distanced herself from the Shadow Master, and adjusted her face and postured to a state suitable for fighting. When she looked up, she was so frightened that she saw a dead body. The skeleton with a thin layer of air-dried skin barely hanging on its face, wearing a goose yellow palace dress, as empty as a mobile clothes rack, is using a copper pot to add oil to the green lamp on the table. His movements are elegant and skillful, without any pyrotechnics. If the appearance is not too scary, it can instantly beat the tea ceremony and flower arrangement performances that Xia Yuanxi has seen in his previous life. However, Xia Yuanxi now had no time to appreciate this textbook etiquette demonstration. She put down the scroll as silently as possible and was about to take out the sharpened silver hairpin from her arms. At this time, the skeleton that had turned a blind eye to her just now turned quietly in her direction, and a pair of blue and green will-o'-the-wisp slowly ignited in its empty eye sockets. Xia Yuanxi was startled, and his hand that was originally going to take out the copper hairpin hurriedly pressed it on the scroll. At this time, the green ghost fire was extinguished. The skeleton opened the incense burner as if nothing had happened, took out a piece of fragrant cake from the sachet on his body and threw it in. He also leisurely turned it over with a copper drill, then crunched and shook his body and turned around to leave. Could it be that with the scroll, "This fool can't see me"? After calming down from the shock, Xia Yuanxi's childlike nature broke out. He dropped the scroll and picked it up again. The skeleton's eyes also lit up and then went off. When Guishan was bullied, Xia Yuanxi kicked her nose in the face and immediately tied the scroll to her back with the cloth strip on her waist, then quickly caught up with him in 3 steps and 2 steps at a time, stepped on the skirt of the skeleton, and watched the fallen skeleton struggling on the ground for a long time, unable to get up, venting his resentment for being frightened repeatedly. "Why did you open one of those big boxes over there?" Xia Yuanxi soon discovered the answer. Several of the top lids of the 8 large boxes surrounding the painted platform with human heads and bird bodies were opened, and several skeletons in similar costumes crawled out of them, holding copper pots and crunching towards the spiral stone steps, adding oil to the lamp holders along the way. Although I didn't find the way out, at least the mystery of who was lighting the lamp was obvious. After the crisis was resolved, Xia Yuanxi focused his attention on the carved animal mouth arch that had not been explored before. This door was 3 people tall, with gray-brown lichen and moss climbing in the crevices of the rocks. Xia Yuanxi pushed hard, but it didn't move at all. He pressed forward and squeezed hard, but he could clearly feel the dong-dong heartbeat. This door is alive. It was unbelievable that Xia Yuanxi groped carefully. The stone door was hard and cold, but the seemingly dry plants on it felt like leather products. The strong and powerful pulse inside seemed to have a torrent rushing through it, venting its majestic vitality. Xia Yuanxi almost used all his strength to break one of the vines. 2 lines of dark resin flowed from the vine wound. When the wind solidified, it immediately grew into a new vine and then became entangled again. There is no way to heaven and no way to the earth. Could it be that I finally survived just to starve to death here? Xia Yuanxi slowly sat down on the ground. After a while, the skeletons who were adding fuel appeared again, and they also brought back the female body above. A string of ghosts lifted the corpse high above their heads like ants carrying food, and carried it to the altar with the head of a human and the body of a bird. A palace-dressed skeleton held a bronze sword with ferocious and simple patterns, and slashed the white and slender neck of the hanging female corpse. The wound slowly oozed thick red and black blood, dripping into the copper tripod in the hand of the other skeleton. Until the female corpse could no longer bleed, the skeletons threw it into the coffin where they were hiding like garbage. The human body was very heavy, and it should have fallen heavily with a dong sound, but there was no sound at all, as if it led to another dimension. After discarding the kitchen waste, 8 skeletons held a copper tripod filled with blood and knelt down in a neat circle on the altar. After an unknown amount of time, the stone door slowly opened with a rumbling sound, only to see that it was filled with the dark brown rattan from the previous door, piling up like a mountain of curly hair that had been cut off in a barber shop, making it disgusting. The rattan slowly squirmed, and in an instant a white basin-sized flesh ball emerged from its inside, covered with purple veins. Is that white thing the weak point of this thing? If you kill it, can you clear the level and go home? Xia Yuanqi sat on the ground bored. A crack appeared on the flesh ball, and the crack got bigger and bigger. Through the 2 flesh flaps, you could see a vaguely snow-white baby inside. The pale and bluish flesh flaps slowly squirmed, which looked more like childbirth than a clamshell spitting out beads. The baby's eyes were closed, and his sleeping expression was innocent and cute. A snow-white translucent umbilical cord on his belly was curled up like a living thing and stretched into the copper cauldron held by the skeleton to suck greedily. The blood inside was decreasing at a speed visible to the naked eye. Let's not complain about the recipe. The way he eats milk is so arrogant, just like a god accepting a sacrifice. This kind of dead kid will definitely not be a good thing when he grows up. Ignoring Xia Yuanqi's complaints, the baby gradually sucked up the blood in the cauldron while eating happily. It was obviously not fully satisfied. It wrinkled its small eyebrows and opened its pink mouth, just like an ordinary crying child. However, the sad face of pear blossoms and rain was just a flash in the pan, and the mouth that opened wider and wider cracked the cheeks. His skin revealed a mouthful of sinister fangs. His eyes that were closed peacefully opened suddenly, and the whites of his eyes were pitch black, and his small red pupils stared viciously in the direction of Xia Yuanqi. The originally pink and jade-like appearance had turned into the incarnation of a demon, making a sharp whistling sound, hungry for the supply of fresh blood. The severely scolded skeleton shook its head from side to side, not understanding where the baby's anger came from. It could only stagger and sway its thin body, groping towards Xia Yuanqi's direction. At the critical moment of fighting, Xia Yuanqi, a naughty boy's classmate, jumped up, ran through the sparse line of skeletons, took out a sharp copper hairpin, and poked the baby in the forehead. Bah! The sharp blade penetrated the body, but did not feel the hard touch of the skull. It was like poking into a leather bag filled with black water. The baby's cracked mouth extended all the way to the cheekbone, showing Xia Yuanqi a twisted smile full of fangs. The hand holding the silver hairpin lost consciousness, but it was firmly attached to it, as if it was possessed. Something entered the body along this place, and it gradually took away the control of the senses. His thoughts continued to collapse and shatter, as if he had fallen into the eternal deep sea of nothingness. He looked up at the world above his head, which was as dark as a mortar, and the war left endless scars on it. All living beings, since the beginning of time, have been killing each other and wandering into evil paths, unable to save themselves. All kinds of cries, lamentations, and roars merged into chains, wrapping around themselves, getting tighter and tighter. Suddenly a voice came from Yao Yao. There is so much suffering in the world. We will be very angry for the deluded sentient beings in this world and the future. We will set off the Red Lotus tribulation fire to burn the world and extinguish all the poisons of greed, anger, and ignorance. So let's kill. Then the shackles fell away, and the world-burning flame bloomed like a thousand-leaf lotus. Just like a newly born woman, she stood in the center of the fire and looked around. Billions of lights illuminated the boundless world, and all things rejoiced in the tranquility of destruction. Chapter 2 Resurrection, Shoujun Book 2. When Xia Yuanxi came back to her senses, she found that her hand had reached into the baby's torn belly at some point. Black blood was flowing down her elbow. The young internal organs inside were cold and slippery, and the heart felt like a hard stone. At this time, the baby's scream was no longer angry, but frightened. "Is it this?" The cold and hollow voice didn't look like him at all, but he had the illusion that he should be like this. With a hook of his finger, the round, hard object was taken out. It was a black and white hollow jade with a swirling pattern, lying quietly on the palm stained by black blood, spotless and shining. In my ears, the shrill screams of the dying monsters suddenly turned into feeble whimpering and the crisp sounds of bones colliding with each other out of control, echoing among the empty mountain walls. "Wait until I go out and hang all the honey on the streetlights." Xia Yuanxi gritted his teeth after eating honey for 3 days in a row. Although he unconsciously eliminated the demons entrenched here, Xia Yuanxi still couldn't find a way to escape. The black blood flowing from the rattan and the baby had evaporated into black dusk, making the visibility in the cave extremely low, far exceeding P2.5. After taking a few sips, he found nothing unusual, so Xia Yuanxi simply ignored it. There was nothing in the coffin where the skeleton demon had thrown the body, and it seemed that it had been sent to an unknown place. However, Xia Yuanxi lay down in it, and nothing happened. However, after moving away the completely dry vines, I found the main tomb behind the arch, which contained many funerary objects such as gold beads and several jars of honey. Honey is the only food in the world that cannot be eaten. Xia Yuanxi saw on TV that honey from the Pharaoh era was unearthed in Egypt. It is still edible after thousands of years. However, if he does not go out to find water, he will have to rely on the urine he saved before. "I'm so thirsty. I don't want to move." Looking at the oil lamp that was about to go out, Xia Yuanxi lay flat on the ground and struggled a few times. Scrolls, ropes, and copper hairpins were scattered around, but he reluctantly got up and stumbled towards the copper oil pot that fell on the ground. Crack. He accidentally stepped on the palace-dressed skeleton that fell under his feet like a puppet. The lifeless leg bones made a cracking sound like dry firewood, and a green fluorescent liquid flowed out from it. The first time I saw a will-o'-the-wisp or something. In an instant, the tomb was filled with light. The scroll on the ground was bathed in the phosphorescence of bone marrow, and silver words with curved strokes like auspicious clouds appeared on the screen. When these words came into Xia Yuanxi's eyes, the black and white jade she got from the baby's belly also broke away from her arms and floated in midair. She stretched out her hand to touch the floating jade. The black part was cold and hard, and the white moistness warmed her hands. Some fragments appeared in her mind like an electric shock. The Huimingxin Xian Sutra of life and death disillusionment is from immeasurable kulpas. It is not final and will not be destroyed. The final tribulations are said to be unfinished. Anyone who accepts this sutra can only cross by consciousness. You must know that the shore is not far away, and you can get it if you seek benevolence. Immortality for 10,000 kulpas can be expected at the end of the day. When he came back to his senses, the jade had disappeared, leaving only a circle of black and white tattoos where the ring was on the index finger of his right hand. Xia Yuanxi stood blankly for a while. Even in the world of Xinxia, you can only teach people one sentence. "Are you kidding me?" After finishing his angry rant, Xia Yuanxi walked towards the glowing scroll and discovered to his surprise that he could understand the bird songs on it without even realizing it, and a strange yet familiar term, Yinzhuan, came to his mind. Could it be that the function of this jade is to allow people to pass the 8th level of the Yinzhuan Major? Isn't it just a foreign language book? Why is there such a lofty name as the Mysterious Sutra of Life and Death? Fortunately, the author of the scroll belongs to the conscience of the industry and is a good immortal in China. In addition to the large title of the book, Beidou Crossing Death, the following is also densely packed with specific contents. As the saying goes, Beidou is for death, and South Do is for life. This sutra is said to be able to absorb the evil energy of death and evil between heaven and earth, temper one's body, and eventually live as long as heaven and earth. There are tens of thousands of immortal techniques with different depths, but the place where you start is all about breathing. Xia Yuanqi tried to follow the scriptures and slowly stretched out his body, sensing the skin of his body with his consciousness. Naturally, his eyes were half closed, and he seemed to be looking but not seeing, and seemed to be hearing but not hearing. His breathing through the mouth and nose gradually slowed down, and his pulse gradually became lighter and almost undetectable. On the contrary, the pores on the skin replaced the function of breathing, greedily absorbing the surrounding aura, like the earth that has been dry for a long time. The density of the surrounding black twilight is getting lower and lower, and the girl sitting on the altar has a quiet and peaceful expression. Her face is becoming more radiant, and her skin is more beautiful.